You're tuned in to RX Radio.
There's something that I see as a prevalent trend in the industry where, building a business has become an afterthought. I've been in startup meetings in the last couple of weeks where they're talking about content. And then some bright individual will step up and be like, well, hold on. Like the KPI and the metric we track is how much money is in the bag. I think there's a bigger thing at play across all businesses, and that's building a brand. And I feel like creating content and building a brand right now are getting further and further apart from one another when it comes to, what you actually see as content and cohesiveness and continuity in brand building. Thoughts?
A lot of words.
That was a big deep breath in. I was like, oh, fuck, he's already upset.
Well, it's gonna be a big word day. I mean, I think I've said this from the jump, and I've been doing this for just over 2 years now, I want to say. When did I start with you guys? 2 years?
No idea. It's all a blur.
It's all.
I don't remember my life without you. How's that?
Which is nice. I like that.
I think so.
No, I think I've said this from the jump, and the biggest piece is like if you're trying to build the brand, it's about authenticity, right? And like, which kind of goes without saying, but you'd be surprised how many people I've told that to when I'm shooting, right? So like, everybody's so worried about content, likes, shares, whatever it is, but like how much of that is actually transferring over into clients, right? And people, with that thought process, people also aren't filming content at all because they think they have nothing to say, right? So I think there's almost like a fine line, which I've told people, which is you need to find the solid mix, especially in the PT space, of like providing value, but also showing that you do the thing, right? Like everybody's so worried about providing like information and teaching somebody how to do a bicep, which like we sell courses on how to train properly, right? Like go sign up for PSL1. But like at the same time, I'm going to pay attention to someone who trains more, like off the jump, right? If I scroll past something that's like, hey, does your shoulder hurt? This is how we need to, and he's a small guy, spaghetti arms, right? Like, no, like I want to see you work hard because that's the one thing that I respect the most out of like, especially in the gym space is like nobody works hard anymore, right? So if I see someone training hard, if I see someone working hard, that'll bring me to their profile, right? That'll let me take a deeper look. And then, oh, wow, they had a reel pop off that had 2 million likes. That's super cool. But he can also pull 6 plates off the floor. Right. Like these little things, I think, is what brings in long-term business as opposed to your 4 seconds of clout before somebody else posts their ass cheeks online and beats you.
Yeah. I think authenticity and consistency. And the thing is, consistency doesn't mean posting every day. Consistency means posting at a cadence that you consistently post at, right? And that's devoid of platform, obviously, like lower attention span mediums like Instagram and TikTok are usually going to require higher frequency. But the thing that I think that people are buying, so much like to your point about people are really buying hard work. It's like, well, this person has been there, right? This person knows how to do the thing that I don't know how to do, which is big. But I think the other thing that, as you get into the coaching as a service industry, you start to realize that it is a service industry, right? It's not necessarily a product. If you're marketing a product, it's just like, does the product do the thing I want it to do? Yes. Okay, cool. That's social proof that I'll buy said product. But the service it's continual, right? So what I think people see is subliminally in a marketing stance. If you have a coach who's like very sporadic and start and stop with their efforts, like marketing, you can see it in phases where like a coach will get a camera and a tripod and set it up. And then it's like, you get a couple weeks of the high res stuff. And then you get nothing. It's like that to me, whether people know it or not, translates a message of inconsistency to their potential clientele and probably pushes, not that objection can't be overcome moving into the future, but it definitely sets a barrier of objection to purchase a lot higher than it needs to be. If you have a coach who I post once a week, okay, great. then this person, if he says this person is going to, your check-ins are this day, or your check-ins are 24/7 or whatever it is, the fact that this person is consistently posting on this schedule or this cadence that's predictive, there's a trust that's built there. So I think like quality and quantity are always these things that we look for in social media marketing, at least organic reach. But I think as far as brand building and business building are concerned, consistency has to be taken into consideration, not in the sense of like you have to be on some Gary Vee bullshit, just post. That's still the quality quantity thing. It's like the consistency is the message, not necessarily the consistency of the message, but the consistency is the message. This person is consistent. They have other shit going on in their life and still they manage to X, Y, and Z post once a week or twice a week. So it's interesting to me, and I'm curious of your thoughts of, what are the things that everyone thinks when they come to you? Like, what are the ledges you're talking people back from of like, okay, hey man, I want to get serious about my content creation. They come to you as someone who builds brands and they go, I want to do this, and this. And you're like, hold on.
Yeah. I think if we can dial back first, the consistency just on that point was, like you said, it speaks volumes, because it just means, like, if we're going to just be straight up about it, it means that someone has their shit together. Right. And that's it. The amount of times that I've heard from multiple individuals, like grown ass, and this is, you knew you were getting into today. Just like grown ass adults who like miss meetings, right? Or like miss this thing chimes when I have something to do, right? Like I run consistently what we're talking about. I post to the Prescript page at least 3 times a week, like bare minimum. And then if we have other collaborations, perfect, right? But I'm not missing those marks, because even if I'm busy as shit and I've got stuff going on, there's still a little reminder in my calendar that says post Shallow's face talking about something to Prescript on Monday, Thursday, whatever it is, right? But the fact that we're consistently posting, consistency. It shows that I'm on top of my shit. I know how to follow a schedule, and I can be trusted to run a business or like help someone progress their business, right? But from what were we talking about?
Kind of like, okay, when people come to you and they're like, hey, I want to do this, you're like, you probably want to do none of those things.
I don't think nobody puts enough thought into what they actually want from their content standpoint, right? All they know, and funny enough, a lot of people's aspirations, which I think is really shitty, is they just want to be a social media influencer. That is the goal, right? And like, how far is that going to get you? So everybody, they reach out, and it depends on the individual, right? If it's just someone that wants to shoot for fun, and this is in no way related to a brand or whatever, fine. Let me know what you're thinking. I'll take some pictures of you training, make you a cool workout edit. Awesome. But a majority of clientele that have reached out to me have just said, what are your rates? I want to shoot. I'm like, what do you want to shoot? And they're like, well, I don't know. What do you think? I'm like, well, I don't know. This is your brand. Like what? So I go to look at their page, kind of see what they're about. Like what is your goal? Right? If we go, majority of people, like we've talked about, they just want to pop off on Instagram. They want to have some reel that's going to reach millions of views. But then you've got other people who, like Ronit, like longtime client, right? He's the guy that does both, right? He posts his training consistently. He is consistency, that guy, and he's building his brand, right? From a day-to-day standpoint, he is training. His day is training, watching Big Mike's podcast. He will go get his steps. He will play with his dog, and then he will post on Instagram. And I can guarantee that happens every single day. And he has that consistency, and he's building his brand, right, through all of that. And when I work with him, a big piece that I hope other, whatever you want to call me, videographer person, like does with their clients is be honest, right? Like if you are going to help somebody build their brand, then respectfully be honest, even if that means being a dick. Like for Ronit, for example, like we filmed a lot of reels. We're always posting on Instagram. And if he said something stupid, I would tell him that it was stupid. I would be like, don't post that. right? Like, but a majority of people are just going to show up and shoot and like call it a day and collect the bag, right? But like, if you actually want someone who wants to grow their business, you're going to be upfront and honest and help them grow said business than worry about what is going to get them a million likes on Instagram, right? So it's like, Ronald is a perfect example of a person that is following their brand and trying to build their business. Whereas these other people just reach out, don't know what they want, and kind of expect me to hand it to them per se. And then to top it off, they want it at a very, very low cost, which means to me, like, it's not even not even a selfish value per se. It's just, it speaks volumes that like they're not looking to invest in their brand, right? Like, so if you're already questioning how much the shoot costs, then why, like, how are you going to spend money? How are you going to make money? You got to spend money to make money, right?
What gets me is this, just the one-to-one comparison of someone in the media or someone in like the fitness space, a coach, a trainer, what have you, looking to engage with someone like yourself, a brand building videographer. And that's what I think you nailed it. I think that's what separates the difference between the two is like someone that just hits play. It's like, dude, you're going to be replaced by a tripod, right? It's the honesty that makes the Manfredo tripod can't go like, yo, dog, can we not stutter, please? Like on some radio bullshit? Like, can you fucking tie it together? We're doing it again. But the one-to-one comparison is so funny because I've seen trainers engage with media professionals and then in their interactions start to complain about their client interactions. And I'm like, the fact that you do not see that you are now becoming your client, it's like, if you're a personal trainer, you shouldn't want fat clients, or at least for very long, right? You want your clientele to get in shape to prove prove the value that you bring to the table. Like a fat client on my roster is not a good client. It shows that I can't reach this person. It shows that I'm not good at my job. And it's like, if you're a videographer, if you're a brand builder, and you let someone do something stupid and post it, you're the same as the trainer that just goes and like, oh yeah, whatever, man. Like, you know what, we'll get back on the wagon next week. It's like, no, like, dude, get your shit together, right? And the same trainers will have the exact same conversation when it comes to money, right? They'll either they'll devalue their service, which usually leads them to not giving a fuck about the results. So now they're getting paid less money to train fat people, and it's going to be this downward spiral until they have to start a fucking OnlyFans account. Or, they know their worth and they go, no, it's this. And trainers, I love, and you can always tell someone who's a front, because they will sit there and they'll go, no, like, I deserve to get paid this much, and then turn around and go to someone who's helping build their brand and their business and go, dog, that's a little bit steep. It's like, you're not worth what you charge because you don't value what I charge. So it's like, and audit, like, the one thing is like to just audit yourself. If you're someone who's listening to this as a coach, and all coaches, like, you're lying to yourself, no matter the business. I just think PTs and online coaching is like the most overt. Everyone is in the media business. Everyone. You can't be in business without being in the media business. So it's like, big corporations are taking this seriously. You don't have a choice anymore, right? So it's wild to me to see that. It's just cognitive dissonance of like how people act and what people say. When it comes to, like, if you were to advise new coach, let's like make a perfect scenario. Cut their teeth on the floor, looking to get into a digital business of sorts, and wants to have, a robust media extension of their in-person services to create some revenue streams online. And what is your advice to people getting into this from a like a coaching perspective, like getting into the media side? What's your advice?
I almost it's an interesting thought, because I've done both at this point, right? I was the PT at Good Life, cutting my teeth on the floor, showing up at 6 and leaving at 9 p.m. Right. And then it got to the point when COVID hit that I thought about continuing online. Right. And like launched a website, did the whole thing, and successfully did so. Right. But I was missing that piece. I was filming my training, and that was pretty much it. And I was just kind of hoping that people would fall into my lap per se, right? But like now that I've seen it from both sides, it's like step one is don't worry about the fancy ass camera and the high quality stuff, right? Start, show your training, gain an audience, and post frequently. Like we said, decide that you're going to post 3 times a week, right? 2 posts of you training, 1 post that provides like significant value to anybody that's following you. That is step one. And I'm not even talking like if that gets your audience engaged, amazing, right? But just start there. You can use your phone, you can use a tripod. Then determine what you want to do next. Like what is the end goal? How much can you allocate to the side to hire somebody as your videographer? And if you're going to hire said person, determine what you are going to shoot that is going to help build your brand, right? Or like, for example, off the jump, maybe you want to start with 1 workout reel, right? Like just something to, well, there's the thumbs up thing that happens on the, God damn it. You want to start with like 1 workout reel and then 2 informative posts a week, shot professionally with the Rode mic, doing your whole thing, right? See how that performs, see if the return on investment shows up, right? Like there's plenty of people who can become a successful online coach without the videographer, right? But it's just the quality, like the quality jumps. You have a second eye. And I think from me personally, someone who has been a PT, right? In the fitness space, I provide that other value, right? Because as they're talking, I can tell them like, that sounds good, that sounds bad. This will pop off, this won't. Fix your shoulder position. Do whatever Prescript has taught me, you have taught me over the years, right? But like, I feel like I'm rambling at this point. But we're gonna have to cut the dead silence here.
No, it's good. It's just, I mean, I think it's the number one, the big takeaway message is like that people just have to do it, right? Like, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I think Sam Sulek is such an interesting case study, right? Because he really exploded what people thought the paradigm was, right? Because he did this, and like, I've maybe seen him peripherally online a handful of times. But it just seems like it's very low res, but he's embodied everything we've talked about so far, right?
It's the, like we said, it's the authenticity, right? But it's also like we need to realize that none of this is predictable, right? You never understand. Like you cannot be like, oh, that's the perfect formula. This is what I need to do. This guy set up a camera and just raw dogged it. He just talked to that camera while he trained and did not do any fancy edits. He didn't do any clips. Nothing. He was like, oh, that was my training day for today, and posted it up on YouTube. And people fucked with it. They fucked with the authenticity. They fucked with like the fact that he was just being a guy who lifted weights. And aside from the fact that he's massive, like
Helps.
But yeah, it does help. But that was it. It was like someone who you could just sit there and watch this guy train. And I think every videographer, photographer, whatever, everybody has their own style. Everybody has their own preference. But in my opinion, I can almost appreciate more what Sam Sulek does, right? Because like we said, it's real. And since the trend of stuff popping up in your face every 4 seconds started to keep people's attention on social media started, I've hated every second of it, right? And I know like, hey, you guys watch our podcast clips, right? I've got GIFs and stuff popping up because we're playing the game, right? It does keep attention. But I do think that we are slowly going to move back to like the calm, collected Sam Sulek, just like day in the life videos, because I think it's more interesting, right? I would rather sit there and watch someone train or listen to someone speak to me than having 9 emojis pop up in 7 seconds. At that point, I'm gone. I'm out. Like,
there's a relatability factor that I think is like it almost coming down to being authentic. I think that's the thing that people are actually striving for. Like as a consumer, if people are in the presence of people who are authentic, it's calming. Because if you're not, you're like, well, I don't have an identity, but he seems to have one, so I'm just going to gravitate to him, and maybe I'll adopt some of his. And it's like the thing I like about Sam Sam's approach is, we work together because I wouldn't be comfortable doing what Sam does. I'm infinitely comfortable. I'm maybe too comfortable having you around. And I'm just like, I'm popping off on some shit I should be saying. And you're like, yo, maybe we don't do that. And I think that's a good thing to have, because like I know some people who engage with a videographer or buy the tripod and looking to start off their sort of their media arm of their business, and ask yourself at that intersection, what would I be more comfortable with? Right? Would I be more comfortable with the J Marsh, or would I be more comfortable with the tripod? I see people try and do the Sulik thing, and they're like setting up tripods in the gym, and they're like looking around. It's like, Doug, you'd be much better off. Like, we shoot, and I don't think I would say 90% of people don't even know that we shoot. Like, because I'm more comfortable between sets. Like, yo, J Marsh, I got something. Toss the mic, clip. Mic's usually off me before I have the last fucking word, and then you go do your set. Because that for me allows me to be the most authentic. If I had to do what Sam did, oh my God, I would look like everyone else. So here's how you know. Here's how you tell. If you start your videos with a clap, you got a new strategy, dog. We're done with the clap thing. Because that's so inauthentic to me. Like, I don't know anyone who punctuates their own sentences with clapping. Like, that's an insane thing to do. You have a mental disorder. You have some sort of like, I forget the name of the condition, but maybe you're just a schizophrenic or something. But like, that to me is like, you need to find a new strategy, because this is not working. Like, and so I think there's a meta principle to take away. It's like, hey, do the thing that allows you to be the most authentic, but understand the environment of media creation will broadly dictate your ability to be authentic in the early stages. If I had to do a tripod now, yeah, I could probably do it, but I've just been doing it for so long that it's kind of like a bodily function. Like, okay, it's clip time. I'm going to say this thing. I can talk in increments of 60 seconds almost to the nose, like 50. I'm coming in like 59 or 101. Like, I'm pretty good at it now, but that's only because I have a way to practice that makes me the most comfortable. And I think the practice thing is another element to it, because like, one of the ways that I have got fairly proficient, I hope, at creating content is using lower forms of media. Like, to me, an Instagram story live is like, that's the batting cages. If you want to do a live or face a camera on a story, like, that is your ability to fuck up and delete it and no one has to see it. And you also don't need to piss off J Marsh by you trying to figure out how to put a sentence together. Like, if you're going to flesh out an idea, talk face to camera in your fucking bathroom until you get it right. And then you go, oh, hey, J Marsh, I got one. Okay, blah, 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 bicep curl, right? It's just, I don't think people practice it. And it's like, man, if you realize how impactful this arm of your business could be, you'd be paying more attention to it.
Yeah. And like you said, practice, right? If you're going to be getting in front of the camera, you got to be cool. You got to like, you can't show that you're tripping out. And you know what? Like, not to throw you under the bus here, but like, we were shooting at Sky, right? And I think we were like considering like, hey, we'll start posting some more stuff to YouTube, like training stuff. And I think we got in the truck and you could tell you're uncomfortable, because I think you went, all right, guys. And I was like, where the fuck did the clap come from? like it's just and clearly that's not for us, right? The whole YouTube daily vlogging training thing is not for us. Instead, we're going to do what you're comfortable with, right? Which is yelling at the internet for an increment of 59 seconds and me putting silly GIFs on the screen and seeing who fucks with it.
Yeah.
Right. And at the end of the day, don't even worry about pleasing everybody, right? There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like your shit all the time. Right. And that's something I tell myself as a creative too. Cause like, creative, Jesus Christ. It's like,
so artistic.
Super artistic. That's what I tell myself too. It's like, I'm going to put stuff out there and there's going to be people that like don't fuck with it. And we will never work together. And that's cool, because people put stuff out there that I think looks really bad, right? Everybody's going to click with a different style or a different person, right? So if you're going to make content, figure out what that content needs to be. If you're going to work with somebody, figure out if you fuck with that person, right? It's like, you and I work so well together because we low key might have the same brain to an extent. You have way more words than yours, but when we talk and train, like we get the clips done and then I go do my set. We run and gun, and that's how it works. I don't stand there and point a camera at you like the entire time and wait for you to say something. That wouldn't work for you, right? And I'm sure maybe you've worked with people in the past where like it was a little fucking awkward, right? Because you just got this person shooting a camera in your face and you're like, I don't need to talk to the camera for an hour and a half, right? I want to talk to it 3 times and make sure I get my lift in, because it's the only peace of mind that I get is in this hour and a half, 2-hour session.
Right? Yeah. And I think, like you said before, it's like either is fine as long as it's authentic. And I think some people might struggle with authenticity. And I think the straightest line to authenticity is sustainability. If you don't know what's authentic, ask yourself what you can continuously do for an extended period of time. And that's what's authentic. And because like there's so many people out there in our consumer space, and like the scarcity mindset of the fitness industry is crazy. And like I understand it to a certain degree, because the consumer base of fitness related products is relatively small when we think of consumer product goods. Like people who are buying bottled water far outnumber the number of people who are buying online coaching or exercise programming, right? So if you're like Dissonance or Smart Water or something, it's like you just have an ability to reach more people. You have a little bit more of a competitive landscape, but your total addressable market is everyone on the planet, right? Like this isn't water. This is an elective service. This is a luxury good in a lot of cases. So it's like, but part of that is an opportunity, because maybe people on the periphery, the consumers that aren't in the marketplace for coaching, they're just not in the marketplace for the way coaching has been marketed so far. Right. Like I was talking to someone just before this call, and they were getting into the education space. And I thought, wow, what a great opportunity for me. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, you'll bring people into the digital fitness education space that wouldn't otherwise ever step into it. So you're going to bring more market share to the industry, which as someone who owns a business who does digital education, that's great. I'll happily help this guy bring more people, because he's going to bring a unique audience. And because he doesn't do it yet. There's a lot of people who do what we do in some way, shape, or form, and sometimes way too close to what we do, to be discussed off air. But they're not. They're pulling from the same pool. We're competing for the same resources. Where in a case like the gentleman I was speaking with before, or in the case of someone who it just needs to figure out their sustainable, authentic way of creating content, it's like, your consumer avatar isn't realized if you're not putting out authentic material, if you're not being authentic, because your consumer avatar could be someone that wholeheartedly does not exist inside the total addressable market of the industry as we know it right now. But you could be fishing a completely untapped pond of people who never thought that. And this is where, when you look at the people who have really made the difference in the industry, like people who are making hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm talking like your Kayla Itzines, I'm talking your Chris Hemsworth. Now, obviously, Chris Hemsworth, strategic advantage of being a superhero and also ridiculously handsome. But it's like, he's not competing for the same audience that I'm competing at. Right? If he got into fitness education, I'd be like, oh my God, what a miracle. Because none of the people who come to our courses are going to take a Hemsworth course. But there's at least a likelihood that people might get into higher level thinking about training through Hemsworth that brings up the total amount of market, like the market cap within our industry. Right? So I think I was having a discussion with a kid wearing pink Crocs once. And I thought, dude, you're sitting on a gold mine. But he's sitting there trying to talk like a 280-pound bodybuilder. I'm like, you're about 125 pounds. Like, you're shredded. You're wearing pink Crocs. He's a quirky kid. But I'm like, dude, there's a lot of quirky people out there with money that look at me and go, not a chance in hell. Right? So like, you're actually competing for a resource that's been untargeted in the industry. And you're trying to come into my world and compete for my people. It's like, my people look at pink Crocs and go, not a chance in hell, right? You need to find the pink Crocs of the world, and you're going to own that pink Croc market, because no one else has thought, and even if they tried to think, no one else has embodied and been that authentic version that also likes fitness. Like, there's an idea of intersectionality that could have a negative connotation, but I think in this case it's super useful. It's like people have dimension to them. right? And fitness is one dimension. But it's like, well, how many intersections can you meet people at and then also bring the intersection of fitness, right? Like there's a dude right now that's in one of our courses that is a lawyer that has lost like 100 pounds in the last year, handle lifting lawyer dad on Instagram. And it's like, he reached out once. He's like, hey, do you think these courses are too complicated? He told me a bit about his backstory. I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, you're probably a pretty smart guy because, you're a lawyer. And now he's like in the courses, and it's like there's an intersection there. The intersection is not necessarily fitness education. He's not a fitness coach, but the intersection is like, this guy talks fast and uses big words. I'm a lawyer. I probably do something similar. So like there's a gravity that comes with more intersectionality, and like there are people whose now we know people in the brand that work for the company that have been with us for a long time. Like you can see the dimensions. It's like you see a bunch of like white guys, high fades, beards, tattoos, like similar music, love dogs, like traveling, like sushi, like all of these are relative intersections, some more closely aligned than others. But it's like, yeah, the more intersectionality you have, the more dimension you have, the more gravity you have, the more pull that you have. Right. So everyone's trying to just tap this very shallow, no pun intended, pond on one dimension of fitness. It's like, yeah, no, we got the fitness thing. We understand that. What else you got? Right. And then that's where I think the diversity in content creation and storytelling is like and I'm not going to go so far as a lost art, but just like something that people don't pay attention to. Like, hey, idiot, they're buying who you are, not what you know. Maybe do a little bit of that. Like you talked about Run It earlier, and I think he's such a good case study in this. Like accountant, really smart, liked fitness, wanted to make it a business, and then ran a fitness business like an accountant. And wouldn't you know it, is doing well.
Yeah. And I think to that point, I actually had a conversation, I'm going to say about 2 months ago with like another photographer, right? And I had shot with them in the past. And it's kind of the reason people shoot with me, the reason people work with me as a personal trainer, whatever it is, it's for me, right? It's like they're buying the person, right? They're investing in the person. And I had this conversation in regards to like the photography stuff, and they were like, you need to start like talking to on Instagram more and like posting a little bit more, because all I do, guilty, is like I'd get the job, I'd do the work, and I would ship it off, and that stuff would see the light of day when the customer posted it, right? I wouldn't post my own stuff. I would never speak to the camera. And I had multiple people start to tell me like, yeah, I didn't really know much about you, but like I kind of liked your work. And then once we actually like worked together, I was like, oh, this person's like really cool. Like I actually like really fuck with this person. And then that person's a repeat customer. And that's when that person was like, start talking on your stories more. Like let people know who you are, because so many people have cameras. Like everybody has a camera. I've had probably 3 fellow like pre-script people reach out and be like, I want to buy a camera. What do I get? Right? Because everyone's trying to make content. But like you just said, like people buy the person, right? They invest in the guy in the pink Crocs, or the guy with the tattoos who likes dogs, right? Or the guy who is way too honest. Like they invest in the person. And I think to tie that all together, like we said, it's the authenticity, but they invest in the person, and that's what they want to work with, right? That's what's going to help them build their brand.
Yeah, and I think it's a good warning sign or a message for people, because just like trainers are predacious, media people are also predacious, right? Like media is an arm or an extension of it's a marketing tool at the end of the day. Now, I see people in the media space is almost like business mastermind people. It's like they don't really care as long as the engagement is good, so they can build their portfolio of like, here's a video I shot that had 18 million views, or it's like, here's a client of mine that had his first 10K month. But it's like, and this is why I think if you are getting into if you're growing your business so that it has a media extension to it, and you're looking to outsource this, like the filter of brand is so useful in keeping things on the rails, because like there's some money that's not worth making. Because I watch coaches go through, I got a buddy this morning, sent me a thing from like a pretty well-known coach in the industry, and it was really disheartening to see that this well-known coach, like sport coach, like performance coach, like smart guy, had succumbed to the DM marketing Filipino VA thing. He goes, "Hey man, does this look legit?" I'm like, "You got a DM at 1:30 in the morning asking you to come to some mastermind in Virginia in 2 weeks. Let me ask you a question. Does it look legit?" And he's like, "No, it doesn't look legit." I'm like, "No, it doesn't look legit." Right. But I see like media people doing the same thing, or people looking to create content doing the same thing. It's like, what can I get engagement? It's like, well, if you have the filter of brand, which is the authenticity of the person that is on the other side of the camera, that allows you to go, does this fit under this? Does that follow these rules? If no, then we don't do it. Right? Like branding to me is like just it's quality assurance for content that if you don't have a rough idea of the messaging you want to put out, I would sit back and be like, what is your brand? Anyone who does content creation, I think of Mike Van Wyck, right? Like Mike Van Wyck just like quite literally probably one of the fastest meteoric rises of a organic growth campaign I've ever seen in such a short period of time. And Mike works with Allura. Allura's previously worked with us, so basically Mike's successful because of us. I mean, I just don't know how anyone, right? Like ipso facto, yeah, it's nothing to do with the fact that he's like the biggest, scariest, like coolest guy. I'm Walmart Mike Van Wyck, essentially, at the end of the day. Yeah. But it's like there's this filter. There's there's a metaphorical filter to the content he puts out. Now Mike's his own person, so he doesn't have to do this. However, if you're looking to build a business, being able to systematize that filter is what a brand is, so that you can have people act as agents of your brand and still allow the content to have a consistent message and messaging, right? So I think like it is, like you said, it's like out of the gate, people just don't know what they want. And I think the first question is like, what do you want your brand to be? And it's this idea that like they just have this dizziness of freedom, this anxiety that comes with that question. It's like, I would get very clear on what that is. Like, what are your values as a person? Let's start there. What are you comfortable with? What can you do long term? Because all of those things are going to establish roughly as you keep building out your business, your profile, your cachet in the industry. All of those things will aggregate to create what people refer to as your brand.
Yeah, and I think like now that you say it, there's almost building your brand first is what should be priority one, right? Like before we progress through the media side of things, there's just people that have lucked out who have done the media thing first and it's popped off and then their brand happened, right? And I think, I mean, maybe I just don't know enough about like Mike's past, right? But like, I feel like he went, say whatever you want on the internet and piss people off because like that's who you are. And then started dropping shirts and like his Van Wyck brand built, right? Like that was the order of that execution. Whereas that's not going to happen for everybody, right? And I think that's what everybody's hoping is like, they'll somehow pop off and then they'll decide to sell lifting straps and lifting belts. And then they'll just like skyrocket it into whatever their brand is going to be. But like, don't cross your fingers on that because I can probably tell you it's not going to happen. Yeah. Right? So start with like brand first, easily.
Yeah. And I just think it's understanding what that is. A lot of that in this space is going to come down to like understanding your value. So I think I don't think Mike is anomalous. I think Mike is anomalous because he knew his value. I think a lot of people put a camera in their face, especially like these Mike's a little bit older than me, but like most of these kids, and like I say that now as not a kid, but I started when I was a kid. I would say that I was a kid when I started. I was 24, 23, maybe younger, 22. So I've been doing this for 12 years ish. And it's like, I didn't have a clear idea of how to enact on personal values. So I just kind of did what I thought I was supposed to do. But it's like, there has to be an evolution. And that's where I think a lot of people get trapped. Like you said, now I never popped off super early. I've sort of just been like slogging it for fucking 12 years. And that's how I've gotten to where we are, wherever that is. And it's like, I would be almost afraid of popping off because it's almost like you just get whatever pops off. Seinfeld has a joke about your father's wardrobe is just a time capsule of the greatest year of his life. Like when he has the best year of his life, he just dresses like that forever. So whether it's like the bowling shirts and the fucking slacks, whatever year that was in, he just somehow keeps finding those clothes for the rest of his life. So like my dad, Labatt's blue t-shirts and blue jeans. So I don't know what's that, like his early 30s, he's 70s or 60, whatever now. Like that's the problem. And it's funny, I had such an interesting conversation with probably one of the larger fitness brands in the world, Mind Pump, years ago. And I'm talking like 10 years ago. And they were, they've always been like big brothers to me. And I remember talking to Sal specifically, and they were getting on some pretty big podcasts at the time. They're now obviously massive in the space. And I remember talking to Sal, and I asked him, like, man, wouldn't it be cool if you got on Rogan? And he goes, that's my biggest fear. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, my biggest fear is if I get on Rogan, because like we don't really have the systems in place, and like we couldn't really get to capitalize on it. And I kind of think of that same comparison when I think about people wanting to pop off now. I'm like, you don't really understand yourself and your place in the market. You don't understand your brand and your voice and your messaging. The last thing you would want to do is all of a sudden have this freeze frame of yourself cryogenically cast in media space forever. Now you have to be that guy, whatever that thing was now. And it's like consciously, subconsciously. And I see it in like lesser degrees with content that goes even pseudo viral within a network. Or if you look at someone's most engaged or viewed reel and you go, I'm going to see a lot more of this now. And you're just like, oh, fuck. And then it's like a week of that. And then another hits. And like, you alluded to this idea of almost randomness of it. And it's just like, you careful what you wish for, because what you might be doing is you might actually be stunting your ability to grow long term if you start getting unjustifiably positively reinforced, I guess would be like a way to look at it. Like, I don't know, it hit the explore page and your thumbnail was kind of funny. And now all of a sudden you have all this reinforcement that this reel about this particular thing or the particular way you did it or the time of day that you released it or all the innumerable variables that people pay attention to that are asinine. And you start to try and replicate that magic. And it's like, the real magic is in not trying at all, right? Because trying is inauthentic. It's you just want to kind of keep doing what you're doing and go like, yeah, this is, it's a bit of a lottery. It hits, it doesn't hit. I don't really give a fuck. I have a posting schedule and a way of delivering that's authentic and sustainable. So it's like, virality is almost a curse, man.
It's like you're saying with like the Rogan example, it's everybody wants it, but they're not ready for it. Right? So like, let's say your reel pops off. Now what? Right? Like what was your brand? What was your idea? And you're like, oh, they really liked that I took my shirt off here and spat at the camera. Right?
Sick. Why did I think of that? Fuck. God damn it.
And now they've got X amount of views and X amount of followers. And it's like, well, now what? Right? Did you have anything ready? And like, what are you going to do next? How is this going to help your brand? You have no idea. So you panic and you go do the same thing over and over again. And now, like you said, it's like, that's what you're known for. And you're not going to grow on that. Will you continue to get views? Maybe, but it's not going to get you anywhere from a brand standpoint. And if I could pivot too, I think I would like to think and hope that people aren't naive, but you got to understand that a lot of what you're seeing out there, it's just like, I don't even want to use the word authentic again, but it's all bullshit, right? Like people can, like we're on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. It's like people can buy followers, right? People can buy likes. People will be in your DMs offering to sell you something that they've never sold ever in their life, right? Your favorite fitness influencer does not know what they're talking about. They actually bought a preset program from somebody else running a masterclass, and now you're paying them, right? There's so many things that are happening on the social media space that I think either you're turning a blind eye to, right? Or people are just not realizing. And that's the biggest takeaway here. It's like and I hate saying it because like the photography, videography, and the fitness space I find with social media is so saturated, right? It's just so saturated, and you really got to keep your head on a swivel and be able to smell the bullshit a mile away.
Well, it's funny because like when you look into other industries, and I'm going on my phone only to bring up an example that I thought was hilarious last night. It's so easy to see it in other industries that aren't as inundated with social media, right? Like fitness industry is sort of, I would say it's a little bit fringe. I mean, I wouldn't say that. Like the numbers would suggest it, but it's like you know, when you look at, I had this guy follow me, and he's a roofer, and he has 681,000 followers. And I was like, okay, I need to like look into this. And I like looked into it, and like his reels have like 8 views. And I was like, oh, this is so funny. Like, this is so funny. Like, it's so obvious that this roofing guy is just doing this, I don't know, for a laugh, or he's insane. But then it's like, it's so obvious when it's a roofer, but it's a viable market strategy when you're a PT. It's just like, man, if this guy was a roofer, everyone would just laugh at him. But it's sort of like the standard, it's the standard issue. Now, like I would say, like we talk about building a brand, I think that's the highest value, because you can build a business around a brand. It's harder, in my opinion, to build a brand around a business. Right? Like you said, brand first. I think at the very least, you should be focusing on a business to start. And I think in the early stages, when people started to realize that, oh, okay, organic social media marketing is here to stay. The big dogs have adopted, elaborate strategies. And I'm talking like Nike and Lululemon and these massive companies. Once they started to realize, that cemented this as a conversation in every startup of all time, right? This is your new website, essentially. Like your profile is your new website, or it's a part of a digital touch point that has to exist in order for you to exist. So in saying that, there's an importance obviously in building your business, but I think as we set a trajectory for long-term business viability, that long-term business viability is going to really be beholden on the strength of your brand, right? Because when look at Lululemon, look at Nike, look at these, unicorn companies, which like there are things to learn and there are things to understand, are random anomalous behaviors that just naturally tilt resources to some companies instead of others. They built a brand first, then a business, then content. You're out here trying to make content first. It's like, at least start with a business, but at best, if you can start with a brand, you're in a really good place. Right. And I think it's a little bit more difficult for personal, like sole proprietors, let's say, to build a brand, because if you're building a brand as a sole proprietor, which is like you are, Timmy Joe's fucking coaching service, your brand and your personal values are the same thing. Right. Like a brand like Nike can have a mission statement. Lululemon can have a mission statement. They're a sort of a faceless entity that really gets to curate their brand collectively. But if you're Timmy Joe's coaching service, your brand is just your personal values. That's all it is. Right. And that's harder because there's no board meeting for that. There is. It's you and your therapist. Like that's what your board meeting is. Like if you want to start building a personal brand, I would say get a shrink first, get a business second, and then maybe worry about content third, because it's going to make your job so much easier, right? If someone comes to you and like, even if it's something that I find like maybe a little bit annoying, like, I don't know, I like the pink croc kid, everything and everyone all the time. But like if someone comes to you and like, hey, I'm doing a raw vegan bakery or something. I like baked goods, but like they fuck it up with the whole raw vegan thing. But if this guy's like about it, you're in. You're like, oh, sick. But if like some guy rolls up and he's like drives like a Ford F-350 and he's got like grills and like braids as a white guy, it's like, yeah, dog, like I'm gonna do a vegan bakery. You're like, this guy sucks. Like there's no authenticity here, right? Like, so do your content creator, brand director, media director a favor and like come to the table with something. Cause I can't stand and not just getting to work with you and watching the other projects you do, but like seeing people in the industry try and blame their creatives. I was like, dog, you're not giving them anything. Like the fact they were able to pull blood out of this stupid rock of a person that you are, like, it's on you. So like, I know the majority of people listening are coaches, and it's like, if you bring, like, I look at, brand builders, creatives, like especially you, is like, you're an exponent, right? An exponent, anything to the power of zero, or any zero to the power of anything is still zero. So a lot of days I show up as a big old fucking donut. And you're just like, yeah, all right, dog, we're just going to train. And I was like, yeah, it's one of those days. But if I show up and we knock out like 6 reels and we get, hey, podcast stuff, we built a media board, a back end system. It's like, yeah, that's an exponent. And it's just so many people that they just don't realize that they're the common denominator. Like, because I see people cycle media teams all the time. And it's like,
you are the problem.
You
figuring this out? But people still won't connect the dots, right? And I think on that point that you just made, it's like we show up, we hit 6 reels, we've got the podcast things, we're doing X, Y, and Z, right? All part of the brand. But a lot of people's brand, like, people are just relying on Instagram, right? And I'm one of them as for right now until website goes live. But like, if Instagram goes down, everybody loses their minds, right? Does your brand exist without Instagram? That's the big question. Because if it doesn't, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, right? I had some friends ask me this question once, and they did it in front of me. They owned a really successful fitness business at one point, and I was sitting having dinner with them, and it was sort of like a lull, quiet, and one of them looked at the other and said, "Kill the company." And they're like, And I forget what they were at the time. And I was like, what am I witnessing? What is going on here? This is so strange. Like, just like dead silence, some Indian food joint. And the one business owner looked at the other one and just said, "Kill the company." And like the person kind of sat back in their chair and was like, I don't know, I break my arm or something. And I was like, what the fuck what just happened? And they're like, yeah, we do this mental exercise all the time of kill the company. Like, because what are our blind spots that if this were to go down, right? Like, that was with us, it was starting an email list. Because that very question, I started asking myself, kill the company. How would I kill Prescript as a company? And there was a time where if I took down social media or paid spend advertising, we'd have been fucked. That's not the case anymore, right? We have a robust lead generation system, email marketing system, but that was born out of that thing that you're saying, that like Instagram goes down, you're all fucked. It's like, yeah. And that's only step number 1, right? Like, look at a company like Nike, like Lululemon, whatever. I wouldn't know what kills Nike. Probably something that kills all of us, right? Like, Putin turns 2 keys and we go to nuclear annihilation is the only way Nike can go down.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's where you want to be. And like most people, if you said kill the company, Instagram goes down even for like a day or two. Like, Instagram's went offline for a couple hours and it's like, what are you going to do? Right.
It went down, I think last week or something like that. I got kicked out of every account and we had podcasts to post and I couldn't post. I could not collaborate with anybody. Nothing worked.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get back into any accounts. And it was like, so now what?
Yeah.
Right. For me, like for us, for Prescript, you're chilling, right? You got the email list. Nike's good.
Good.
Nike's good. Marshall Media, he's gone.
God, who's that guy? R.I.P. R.I.P. that guy.
Like, he's gone. Like, the brand's not there. So just like, you got to take the measures to build that brand and make sure you survive the nuclear blast, right? When social media goes down, when TikTok gets banned, right? Are you still going to be around?
Yeah, got to diversify the portfolio, as it were.
Yeah.
Well, Jay Marsh, I'll see you.
Said some words.
Appreciate you always. No, it's good, man. I think it's just such a comfort. Like, no one hears the other side of the camera's perspective, and everyone thinks they know what the fuck they're talking about. And it's like, okay, go ahead, change the white balance or the ISO or the f-stop. No, you don't know what any of those are. Okay, then how about you shut the fuck up and let people who know what they're doing do their goddamn job?
Yeah, shut up and let me Google it for a second, because then I'll do
No, man, I appreciate you taking the time always. Probably going to have this a recurring. I'm sure you'll get a bunch of questions. Hopefully reach out to Jay Marsh if you have questions on media. And like I think the honesty piece is probably the biggest takeaway, because
Yeah.
you should have someone in as a part of your brand that has that singular focus. Like you said, not just grab the bag and run, because those people are just always looking for new people. Every time you get introduced to someone, it's like, you're doing long-term work with them, because you're like, hey, that sounded kind of stupid. Maybe we do it again, but like the smart way. But no, dude, I appreciate you taking the time. We'll run it back here soon, I'm sure. But I'll see you. I'll see you tomorrow, man.
See you tomorrow.